For this meeting of the Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee. Welcome, everybody. My name is Cam Gordon. I'm chair of the committee. I'm joined today by council members Andrew Johnson, Jacob Fry, and Lisa Bender. We represent a quorum of the committee. Elizabeth Glidden and Alondra Cano are both gone on city business. I know that Council Vice President Glidden is at the legislature testifying on behalf of the city. We have 6 items before us today. We have a presentation, and we have 3 consent items and 2 discussion items. So we're going to start with our presentation today, which is a presentation of our Green Business Awards. And I'm going to ask, I think it's Dan Huff and Patrick Hanlon, to one or both, to get us started.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, council members. My name is Daniel Huff. I'm the Director of Environmental Health in the city's Health Department. We in environmental health operate under 3 guiding principles. What we've done is we've taken the city goals and our department goals and kind of distilled them down to 3 things that I can remember. And those are that we protect health and safety, that we support our businesses and our community, and that we are part of a city that works. That is, we are efficient and good stewards of the public's resources. And the award ceremony we have today really I think imbue those 3 guiding principles. We are a city that works. We are cost effective. By working with our businesses, by providing a matching grant where the business puts in a lot of their own funding, we are able to tackle environmental issues in a very cost effective way for the public. This also is a way for us to provide a service back to the businesses that pay fees to the city. This program is funded by the general fund through pollution control registration fees. And those annual fees to our businesses allow for our environmental team to do the great work they do, but also fund this Green Business Matching Grant program. And third, we're able to really scale this program up with a relatively small investment from the city through partners with Clean Air Minnesota, the state pollution control agency. We have been able to scale this project to where now what we're doing in Minneapolis is happening statewide through the PCA. We're very excited about that. And as part of a city that works, I want to introduce our environmental services team. And we have, in addition to Patrick, we have Tom Frame, who is our environmental engineer. We have Erin Streff. Erin joined us recently as an environmental inspector. She has her master's from UCLA. Chakavi Moa is our analyst. His degree is in computer science. Ahmed Hashi is recently from California as well and joined us as an environmental inspector. He has expertise in fine particulate monitoring and air pollution. We have Jenny Lansing. She's actually in charge of our air quality study. Her master's is from the University of Colorado. We have Jim Doughton, our supervisor, environmental services. Jim has a lot of masters. He's working on his 3rd one, in addition to be a master sergeant retired from the U.S. Army. So we have a great team here. Makita Keys, who's also an inspector, is out sick today. This program helps support our businesses. It helps support our communities. We have some businesses here today that are now more effective and more efficient as they deliver their services to the public. They will actually save money by converting, having gone through the sort of larger capital outlay. They now have a more cost-effective and cost-efficient operation thanks to participation in this program. And our primary goal, which is to protect health and safety, whenever we remove air pollution or other pollution within our city, we help the health of our community, of the folks who work in these businesses, and the neighbors to these businesses. So this program, which you help fund, I think really helps us meet our 3 guiding principles in environmental health. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Patrick Hanlon. He's going to tell you more about this year's award winners and participants in the program. Patrick.
Thank you very much.
It's working now. Do you mind grabbing? Sure. We have 3 businesses that we're going to highlight today. Chair Gordon, council members. My name is Patrick Hanlon. I'm the Environmental Initiatives Manager for the City of Minneapolis. Thank you for the opportunity to present this year's Green Business Award winners. The Green Business Grant Program, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is we take 1/3 match of city funds to 2/3 of a business match to invest in projects that have a measurable and positive impact on human and environmental health in Minneapolis. While some people fight for change, this is approach, and that has its place. This is an approach where we focus on areas where we can work together towards real and meaningful change, where the end result is less pollution, safer workplaces, cleaner neighborhoods, and stronger businesses. It's not theoretical, it's happening. And these three businesses that we're highlighting here today are examples of this. And the first one that I'd like to call attention to is Oscar Auto Body. Ramin, if you want to come up to the front here. And the awards that we have are from Accent Signage. If you want to come all the way around. They're from Accent Signage, and they're agro-polymer base. They're compostable and recyclable, which I hope you don't take advantage of those two qualities of the sign. But they are a very green product in and of themselves. Oscar Auto Body is located at 2827 First Avenue South. Owner Ramin Hakimi made a huge commitment towards switching over his high VOC Vault Organic Compound content paint line to waterborne paint. Waterborne paint is a safer alternative that reduces VOC pollution by about 80%. The improvements at Oscar Auto Body not only benefit the people that work there every day, but also lowers emissions in the local neighborhood. From an environmental justice perspective, Ramin's business is located in an area with some of the highest percentages of people of color and the highest concentrations of poverty in Minneapolis, and that makes it one of the higher places in the state. His business location along the Midtown Greenway makes his emission reduction all the more important, where people bike, walk, and run by his business. As a small business owner, Ramin attended a Clean Air Minnesota event this past summer and served as an ambassador for a statewide program modeled after the Minneapolis Green Business Matching Grant Program to voluntarily reduce emissions across Minnesota. Eric David from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency is here today and runs that statewide program. Eric, if you want to stand up real quick. Oscar Auto Body was the first business to leverage both state and city funds to make his project happen. I also want to give a special thanks to Joni Ballweber, sorry. With all the work that she did in tirelessly working through the logistics and getting all the paperwork sorted out for this project. And a special thank you to Environmental Initiative for also walking through that process with Joni and Ramin. Also a special thank you to the Minnesota Technical Assistance Program, the University of Minnesota. They helped with some of the technical aspects and then also verifying the emission reduction on the project. We're proud to have a responsible business owner like Oscar Auto Body in Minneapolis, and thank you to Joni and Ramin for the hard work that you did and for the project that you brought to Minneapolis. Thank you very much.
I want to thank everyone here for this award. It's very humbling. Patrick was pivotal in encouraging that this is possible to actually get help to move our business forward from the solvent that was being used to the water base. We all knew the benefit, but this help made our paint process actually go twice as fast, besides the health benefits. So it's been a great investment. It's exciting for us. All of our employees are excited. We're excited, and I'm very happy. I'm thankful.
All right, next up is Dunwoody College. Mary Pouch-Metter, Senior Development Officer for Dunwoody College. Bruce Graffender, Auto Collision Principal Instructor. Dunwoody College of Technology, Mary and Bruce worked diligently with their organization and with outside organizations for additional donor assistance to make their project happen. And we're so fortunate that they did. Dunwoody College of Technology has made the commitment to teach its auto body students using waterborne paint. One of the main challenges for auto shop owners in switching to waterborne paint is getting their paint techs trained in the new technique. By partnering with the Minneapolis Green Business Matching Grant Program, Dunwoody College is now training the next generation of paint techs in cleaner, greener, safer alternative to high solvent paints. It also opens a Minneapolis location for hosting workshops for local business owners and paint techs to switch to waterborne paint. Through state-of-the-art training in low VOC techniques, Dunwoody College has filled a huge piece of the puzzle for cleaner air in Minneapolis and the region by providing a place where paint techs can get trained in the next generation of painting techniques. A special thank you again to Environmental Initiative for the help that they provided on this project, and a special thank you to the University of Minnesota MinTap program. Thank you very much, Mary and Bruce.
We're very pleased to accept this award on behalf of Dunwoody College of Technology, and we would like to thank the City of Minneapolis and Patrick and his department for providing this grant to the college. We had been looking to expand our use of waterborne paint for several years, and being a private, not-for-profit college, sometimes it's hard to put together a big project like this, the funds for a large project like this. So this grant that we received from the city really helped and jump-started the process for us. You know, the $19,000 grant was fantastic, because what that did was it spurred our industry partners and our advisory committee members and those folks into helping us out as well. And we got a grant from PPG Paint that was almost as much as the city grant. It was a donation from PPG. And then we had Abra Auto Body and Master Collision come on board with some donations too. So it all came together just really nicely, and it was all because of the start from the city grant that got that going. So we really appreciate it. It was a great help. And so what that does for us is we're training, the next generation of painters, and we've been able to update our curriculum, and we're now teaching 75% of our paint training in waterborne paint and 25% in solvent-borne, which it was the other way around before, because we were limited to the size of the jobs and how many we could do before we got the grant for the booth, because we couldn't dry the waterborne paint. And with the new booth, we've got the accelerated drying, and it, like Ramin said, it just dries up real fast, and it actually is very productive. And the students are going to go out there, and they're going to influence shop owners when they graduate and they go out and work. And if they don't have waterborne, they're going to say, "Gee, why don't you have that? We used it at school, and it was great." And it's really a win-win, because the product's better. So it's great for the environment. We're going to help clean up the air, and the school's not buying as much solvent or emitting as much solvent into the air, and our waste stream, our paint waste stream, is cleaner now too. So we save money on the paint waste. We're not buying the solvent, and it's just a win-win for everyone. So we really appreciate the help, and it's really turned out well for the school, and it'll be our pleasure to help with workshops as necessary. If you need to have people come in, it'll be great. We'd like to help. All right.
All right, and the last one is U.S. Cleaners. Osdale, if you could come up. And Philson, if you could come up. And this project really helps some of the work that we do with the matching grant program kind of hit home in terms of the worker exposure aspects of the chemicals that some of the businesses in our community work with. But U.S. Cleaners, last year at this time, actually, we received some testing results from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and the Minnesota Department of Health for Parkway Plaza. The testing was done to determine levels from a previous spill. The results, however, revealed concerns that were associated with the present business. The health standard for taking action was 60 micrograms per cubic meter. In the dry cleaner, they found 87,000 micrograms per cubic meter. Additional testing revealed that PERC at 500 micrograms per cubic meter was found in a neighboring Somali daycare with children as young as 6 months old. These are levels of chemicals that none of us would want our loved ones working with or our children exposed to. Upon hearing the unpleasant news, Mr. Carrera, the owner of U.S. Cleaners, acted quickly. He invited us into his business with monitoring equipment to try to determine the source of the PERC. Inspectors, Jim Doughton among them, determined that there was a missing gasket, and to which Mr. Carrera quickly replaced it. He also quickly worked to seal off his business from the surrounding businesses, and I don't think you got any sleep the night you did that. It was immediate. It was that night. And so within weeks, we worked with Mr. Carrera through the Green Business Matching Grant Program to switch out his PERC machine and was able to switch the existing dry cleaning equipment to become a PERC-free facility. This is a change that takes most businesses many months and up to a year to complete. Follow-up test results have showed PERC levels at the daycare have dropped to 0. We just got those back in December, they took those. And they had been gradually dropping all year. An insignificant amount of PERC in U.S. Cleaners. Thanks to the fast and responsible action of Mr. Carrera, the people at Parkway Plaza, and especially the children, are breathing easier. We normally don't call out the work of contractors on projects, but this is a special case. Weinberg Supply went to extraordinary efforts to make this project happen very quickly, and it was a top priority within their company. David Weinberg, I believe you're here today. Oh, and Aaron Dahl. I didn't even see you. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. This project couldn't have happened without their fast and thorough action. A special thanks to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency for the testing that was done and the follow-up testing to make sure that levels were dropping, and Eric David is also representing that group today. I won't make you stand up twice. And a special thank you to the Minnesota Department of Health, Jim Kelly. I don't believe he made it here today, for their assistance in disseminating the health risks of PERC at U.S. Cleaners and meeting with the owners of Rise and Shine Daycare, Filson, Ishmael. A special thank you to Fardoza Omar from Environmental Health. Fardoza, if you can stand up. And Muhammad Ishmael from Business Licensing for facilitating meetings with the parents at Rise and Shine Daycare. And a very special thank you to Filson Ishmael, the owner of Rise and Shine, for her patience, concern, and thoughtful approach in communicating with her rightfully concerned parents at her business. So thank you very much, Osdell and U.S. Cleaners, for the work that you did. And I'll hand the mic over to you if you want to say a few words.
I'm just want to say in a few words, I want to say thank you to Patrick, first thing, because he helped me a lot. When I don't understand some stuff, he always there for me, and he I think he's a nice person, and he do a great job. So also I want to say thank you to the city, because the money they give it to me to make it work, everything, so they keep my business work. And I think my customers very like better this way. They're happy because there's more help for the customers and everybody else around the place. And also I want to say thank you to Weinberg. They helped to happen this fast and make it work too. Thank you for everything.
Hi, I would like to thank first Patrick for all the process he did for us and everybody here, especially for Dosa and Mohammed. We have kids as young as 6 weeks, actually not 6 months. Yeah, it was really panicking for everybody of us, the employees, the kids, and everybody who was involved there. So we really would like to thank for all the work they did and everything U.S. Cleaners did by changing everything that was wrong, and everybody's happy now. We have all our kids. The parents had panicked, but we assured them that City of Minneapolis is doing everything possible to fix the problem. Thank you, everyone.
Also, I'd like to say thank you to the people for their care and to be like so patient to get everything straight, and we do everything we can to do it fast. So I want to say thank you for all that. Yep.
All right, so as you can see, these projects take a lot of dedication and cooperation between a lot of diverse partners and a lot of different people. A few people I haven't mentioned yet is Shalini Gupta and Cecilia Martinez from the Center for Earth, Energy, and Democracy. Is Cecilia still here? Oh, there you are. If you want to stand up. They help us take a look at these projects through an environmental justice lens. And it's an area that we can always improve on and will continue to improve on. Thank you to our Clean Air Minnesota partner, American Lung Association, John Hunter. You're going to stand up? Thank you. They provide evaluation of our projects, assistance with that, and then another thank you to our Clean Air Minnesota partner, the Chamber of Commerce, for project evaluation, Matt Johnson, Todd Klingel, and Tony Koalis, who look at those applications. So thank you very much to Dunwoody College, Oscar Autobody, and U.S. Cleaners for taking the risk and doing something new and for dedicating your time, energy, and money to make real changes in our city. Thank you, council members, for supporting these programs. I know Councilmember Johnson and Councilmember Bender provided public support for these projects as they were going on. These programs show that we're willing to put our time and money where our mouth is when it comes to positive impacts, projects that positively impact human and environmental health in Minneapolis. And not to get ahead of ourselves, but we are excitedly working on the projects for 2016 right now. And we have more projects, great projects lined up for next year, and we look forward to coming back next year and presenting some more projects to you. So thank you, Chair Gordon and council members, for your time today and your support.
Well, thank you very much. And congratulations to all the staff and to the award winners here. I see us slowly moving away from PERC in our dry cleaning and away from these kind of solvents in our auto painting, and I think you folks are leading the way, and that's very significant. I really appreciate that. Are there any other comments that council members would like to make? I know I followed most closely the Parkway cleaner issue, and we were all worried when we first heard the news as well, and we were pulling for a good resolution, and so really appreciate that. I think we don't wonder if we have to approve this action or take a vote on this. I think these awards were already given out, and we don't really just kind of accept the presentation. We don't have to act on anything because it was you guys who did it all. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So we're going to move on then. And you're welcome to all stay, or if you'd like to scoot off, we totally understand. We've got some other business, but thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. The next three items on the agenda are consent items, and if any committee members would like to pull something off, we can certainly do that. I'll just read through them. Item 2, which is our first consent item, is authorizing a contract with the Minnesota Department of Health to accept an estimated revenue of $40,000 to address gaps in department plans and response activities related to the Ebola virus disease. Item 3 is authorizing execution of amendment number 4 to the contract with Next Gen Healthcare Information Systems for 3 patient portal licenses with no charge to change to contract dates or amounts. And the fourth item is authorizing execution of a grant agreement in the amount of $19,200 from the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization to hire interns to assist in erosion control enforcement. I will, that's all right. You could vote from wherever you are in the room. Seeing no discussion on any of those items, I will move all 3 of our consent items. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those motions carry. And that brings us to our 2 discussion items, and both of them are from the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department. And the first one is our Community Innovation Fund report. And Mr. Bin is
Mr. Chair and council members, I'm going to introduce this item on the Community Innovation Fund and then turn it over to David Zaffron from our Neighborhood and Community Engagement Commission. David heads up the subcommittee that's been working on developing this program. Eric Gustafson's also here from the NCEC, and I don't know if you plan to speak, but, and also, Jeff Strand just walked in. Jeff Strand and Ishmael Israel all worked on this program, so they may have something to say later. But today we're proposing to move forward on the Community Innovation Fund. And this is a small funding program that's actually been discussed for several years. It really came out of the Framework for the Future document, which was prepared and presented to the council in 2008. And I believe the current mayor and current council president both sat on the committee that developed that Framework for the Future. And it was proposed to be a companion program to the existing Community Participation Program. And where the Community Participation Program involves neighborhoods generating priorities and then kind of forwarding them on to the city, the Community Innovation Fund, is designed to take city identified goals and priorities and have neighborhoods identify what we would hope are innovative solutions to those goals. So the 2 work together. The Community Innovation Fund is much smaller than the Community Participation Program, but again, they're companion pieces. This program has actually been on hold for a few years as the funding for neighborhood programs was shifted from the Consolidated TIF District to the NRP funds. This fund had to wait until this year, actually, until we could initiate it. But we're proposing to go forward. The initial authorization is for $300,000 for the next 2 years, for 2015 and 2016. And again, projects would be funded this year and then continue through 2016. The guidelines that are before you today were developed after a fairly extensive neighborhood participation process. We had a series of meetings throughout the city. I know the chair was in attendance at a few of those. And before we even drafted the guidelines or prepared to draft the guidelines, we asked the neighborhoods what this program should look like. And for example, one fairly fundamental question we asked was, would neighborhoods prefer to see fewer larger grants, say 4 grants of $75,000 each, or more smaller grants? And overwhelmingly, we were told more grants would be preferred for the reason it allows us to fund more projects, but also some neighborhoods express, the problem with just absorbing a large amount of funding in any one project. So for that reason, we have a cap of $30,000 on any one grant in this first funding cycle. We also heard that we should keep the program relatively simple. We've tried to achieve that, but as with any funding program that the city prepares, it's sometimes not quite that simple. But we've tried to keep at least the application process fairly simple to apply for and to find out if you've received the money. So again, the program is proposed to be sent out to the neighborhoods. They would have 2 months to apply for their specific projects, and then those proposals would be reviewed by the Neighborhood Community Engagement Commission with recommendations forward to this committee. And with that, I'll turn it over to David to explain a little more detail what the guidelines involve.
Welcome, David.
Thank you. My name is Dave Zaffron. I was appointed to the Neighborhood and Community Engagement Commission by the City Council last year, so completing my first year on the NCEC. And the reason that I wanted to serve on the NCEC is that I think it's a strength of the City of Minneapolis that we fund community organizing. And I think it's the strength of this fund, and the reason I volunteered to chair the committee that developed these guidelines is that we're going to fund community ideas, ideas coming from our neighborhoods and other community organizations about how we can make our city work better. So that's why I'm here, and we formed the committee to develop these guidelines last fall, and we've been working on this for about 6 months. As you heard Howard mention, this is a process that has been ongoing for quite some time and got quite a bit of input from neighborhood organizations and others, and is grounded in the framework for the future work that was done, going back to 2008 and before. So this fund is designed to provide grants to neighborhood organizations to foster innovative and locally relevant approaches to city-identified goals. One of our discussion points was how to define city-identified goals, and in the end, we decided to simply include all of the city-identified goals and priorities that were adopted by the City Council, so that there weren't questions about why are you funding this particular goal versus another, or this priority versus another. So we see all of those as relevant city-identified goals for programs to potentially address. Another key objective of this grant fund is to foster collaboration between neighborhood organizations or between neighborhood organizations and other community-based organizations. So a single neighborhood organization can apply for this grant, but there's going to be a preference given to projects that involve a degree of collaboration between multiple organizations involved. As Howard mentioned, this has $300,000 over 2 years with a maximum amount of $30,000. We tried to strike a balance between funding more projects, but also making sure that the amount that could go towards a single project would be sufficient for a 2-year period and sufficient to carry out the goals of the proposal that's put before us. On page 4, you'll see the criteria that we've developed for the applications that we're going to receive. And some of these that we've already gone through. The first two are really the 2 core goals of this fund: the degree of collaboration and the degree to which it addresses an innovative or locally relevant approach. There's a set of others that are really about the applicant's ability to carry out the project. And then I'd say that there's a third category of criteria that we've adopted that are about representation and collaboration. So the level of collaboration between the applicant and city departments that might be involved, if it's an idea involving public works, for example. The level of participation by neighborhood residents in developing the proposal, or between the organizations involved, and the degree to which the board of the neighborhood organization represents the demographic makeup of the neighborhood in question. You'll also notice there's just sort of 2 addenda to that. One is that we want to try to achieve a geographic balance of these projects, and that obviously depends in large part on what applicants, where they come from and what kind of proposals we receive and where they're from, but we do want to make sure that we're seeing a geographic balance of projects that we do fund. And secondly, that not meeting any one of these single criteria isn't going to disqualify your application. So all of these criteria are going to be weighted, but they're not all designed to be requirements for this grant fund. And so I'm proud of the work that we've done as a committee to put this together in a pretty short period of time, to take the work that had been done previously to develop this first round. And with that, I'd welcome your comments.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say I'm very excited about this. I think it's great to have the community bringing forward their ideas and really driving change. And, something that I firsthand experienced being on a neighborhood association board is some of the confines of a lot of the other grants. They're so restrictive in terms of what you can do. And we would develop work groups and have community members come together and say, hey, we want to really revitalize this area and do all this great work. And we could only access grants to do just a very limited amount of work out of all the ideas. So I think this is just really exciting. I can't wait to see what ideas come forward, and I really thank you for your work on this.
Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Was there discussion about opening the grant program beyond neighborhood organizations?
Yes, there was discussion of that, and that's why we are putting a strong emphasis on projects that are going to have a degree of collaboration, either between multiple neighborhood organizations, but especially neighborhood organizations collaborating with other community-based organizations as well. But the feeling of the committee and the full commission was that this was a fund that was designed to be a companion to the community participation program, but to fund city-identified goals. So the fund that it would fund projects coming from neighborhood organizations. Do you want to?
Just to add to what David said, one more kind of constraint is the funding source is the consolidated TIF district, which is dedicated to neighborhood funding. So that restricts us to neighborhoods only.
I'll just point out that I believe in the framework that was approved, it also expressly said that the fund will provide grants to officially designated neighborhood organizations. So I appreciate that, but also I appreciate the encouraging co-applicants to participate in that. I think that's a significant step, and that's a good way to kind of address some of that issue. Councilmember Fry, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It says the action requires an appropriation increase to the operating budget. How is that increase allocated and why was it necessary?
The appropriation increase is, it goes into the NCR budget to fund this over 2 years. The reason it's necessary is because when the budget was being discussed last fall, the program hadn't been fleshed out yet. So we thought it best to wait until the program was fully formed and then bring it forward for an appropriation amendment, if you will. Did that answer your question?
No, I don't think it did actually. So I guess, can you repeat what you said again? Maybe I missed part of it.
Well, it's currently in the long range funding stream for neighborhood programs. Again, this goes back a few years, but it's never been budgeted in the NCR budget. And as I mentioned last fall, when this program was still being developed, we thought rather than come forward with a budget appropriation, we would wait until the project is fully formed, which is now, and then move forward with it, with an appropriation, an amendment to our appropriation.
Okay, and now that the program is fully formed, it's clear that the extra $300,000 is necessary?
Correct.
Okay, for what exactly?
To fund I've been instructed by the finance director not to use the term grant, but to fund the projects that will be coming forward over the next 2 years. Again,
okay, these are specific projects to be identified by the neighborhood association that will then receive the funding.
Right.
Through the application process.
That's correct.
Okay.
So we're asking for two things today. One is approval of the guidelines, but also approval of an appropriation for the $300,000 to fund the program.
Okay, that makes sense. And it says so that this money will be given to these two neighborhood associations based on their ability to meet one of many of the city's goals. So I don't remember the exact terms for all of our goals, but growth, equity, engagement, environment, et cetera. Are there specifics? I mean, that's like everything we do. Are there specifics that we focus on here?
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Fry, we've kept it broad in this first funding cycle. I think initially we thought perhaps it would be more narrow in terms of the goals that are being addressed. But in order to, again, not be restrictive and to see what neighborhood projects are out there. We've asked, well, we will be asking neighborhoods to address one of the 6 goals that the city has identified, those that you mentioned.
Okay, thank you.
And I appreciate that within the guidelines that you're sending out, all those 6 goals and all these strategic directions or whatever we were calling the sub-bullets under those are listed. So I think that kind of gives a palette so those neighborhood organizations can look at them. I also noted that actually in the framework for the future, not only did we say the money must go to the designated neighborhood groups, but we even there said and queued it up for you to say high priority will be given to those proposals that include 2 or more organizations or between organizations and other community-based organizations. So the way I look at this, it seems to be following pretty clearly and generally the guidelines that were provided back then for implementation. I think we had some ideas that this fund in the future anyway could be created for the council to decide we wanted to focus in on a few goals and priorities if we saw there was a big need. So that was one of the ideas. If we decided we wanted to use the money to provide incentives to see more work in any particular area, this gave us an opportunity. But I'm grateful that the commission didn't decide they're going to pick their favorite goal and say it all has to fund our favorite goal. And by being broad-based like this, I think we can help support what Councilmember Johnson was saying by looking and seeing what kind of great ideas and innovation things come up. So I appreciate that, and it seems like this has been very thoughtful. I'm a little bit concerned that you're only giving yourselves about 10 days to get all the applications and figure out who gets that award. I looked at the timeline. I think it was 10 days, but so how many of you here in the room serve on this committee? Okay, well, you better make sure to block off that 10 days. Don't take any family vacations or anything there in the middle of June so you can look at that. Councilmember Bender has another comment or question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, will this go then to Ways and Means for some more of the specific questions about the funding source and the budget? If not,
yes, we'll be referring to Ways and Means. And really the way I look at it is this is money that's already been in the budget. It's in the consolidated TIF revenue stream that's been coming in and it's been waiting there. And we didn't send it over to Neighborhood Community Relations Department until they actually had the guidelines approved and we get approved moving forward with it. So this is just a piece of that. Okay. So that's my understanding. Am I describing that accurately?
Correct. Yeah, the money has been in that.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, it would normally have been within NCR's, their annual budget, or it would normally have been within the budget of how is it reflected in our budget?
There's probably a fund that has to do with the consolidated TIF district. Okay. And a lot of that fund goes towards the Target Center, and then a lot of that fund goes towards neighborhood community relations. Okay. But some of it hasn't been assigned yet, including this $300,000 because we hadn't developed the guidelines and we didn't authorize spending it on our community innovation fund yet. We actually held it back for a while because we didn't really have the revenues because I guess we were, I don't know.
Mr. Chair, the funding source for all neighborhood programs for the last 2 years has been that repurposed $10 million from the NRP funds. So that restricted what we could
repurpose. That's what I was looking for. I was going to say the clawback, but it's really known as the repurpose.
Right. And if I may add, perhaps the best way to describe it is these funds have been earmarked for this purpose for a number of years, but never actually appropriated in a budget.
Then, Mr. Chair, if I may, I have one other question, or I guess more of a comment maybe about the program development. It seems like an enormous amount of time went into that, and I am really appreciative of all the work. I often, though, see that a lot of NCR's engagement is directed specifically at neighborhood organizations and their members and boards. And I think the next presentation will highlight some of the ways where our existing boards fall short in representing the broader community. And so I would encourage in the future a broader engagement to make sure that we're, reaching the folks who aren't involved now. I would think of this hopefully as something that will move our community engagement process in a way that's, ideally I would think that innovation would help with some of these representation issues, with the narrowness of a lot of our engagement in terms of the numbers of people or percentage of people who are participating in the important decisions that the city is making. So I would argue that it would be helpful to have more diversity and broader voices in some of these program design as well. So it's just a comment. If you had thoughts, I'd welcome them.
I think that's a great comment, and I think I'm hopeful that we'll actually see that some of this money is going to be used by some of our neighborhood organizations to actually build bridges and reach out and improve the way that they're engaging different sectors of their community. But we'll see. Clearly, One Minneapolis and kind of is one of those goals. I know there's some neighborhood organizations that are doing amazing work reaching out to renters, for example, and trying to get them engaged. So hopefully, if you're listening at home, people will think about using this innovation fund to do some of that good work. Seeing no other comments or questions, then I'm going to move approval of the guidelines and increasing the appropriation to NCR and a referral to the Ways and Means Committee. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, say no. That motion carries. And that brings us to our final discussion item, the long-awaited and anticipated Blueprint for Equitable Engagement. And this is an update. I'm not sure when we first viewed that this update would be coming, but I think we were expecting it a little while ago. But I think that we've seen some additional work and some good work from the commission on this. And I'm excited to see what you have to offer. Welcome, Mr. Rubador.
Chair Gordon and committee members, good afternoon. I'm very happy to be here today to present the update on the Blueprint for Equitable Engagement. As Chair Gordon mentioned, it was our intent to come back a little bit earlier, but for a number of kind of administrative changes, we ended up being moved to today. But we've been continuing this work. I think you'll find this work very exciting as we roll forward. Some of the questions that came up at the previous conversation, I think, are going to be addressed as we present today. I am joined by Chair Israel, and he's going to, Chair of the NCEC, sorry. He's going to be co-presenting with me on part of this conversation as we go forward. So first, I wanted to start this off with the video from the City Accelerator Program, if I could. I'm going to put that up on the screen here in a second. And just to frame this up, we've been working with the Mayor's Office and the City Coordinator's Office on really bringing the blueprint to life within the city, and really an overview or overhaul of our community engagement work to be more innovative, to try to address some of the deficiencies that we currently see, the opportunities that we could really move in on. So really trying to make sure that we're building an engagement system that is diverse, that brings in all voices in the city, and that really helps inform our work. And part of that is we've applied for the Living Cities City Accelerator Cohort Group, which would, if we are accepted as one of the cities within that group, bring in technical assistance from Living Cities organization to really help build our engagement work and kind of look at it more from a national perspective and some other models that are out there. So if I could, I'm going to play that first, and that'll help kind of frame up where we see the blueprint living within the city work, and then we'll get into the actual blueprint itself.
Minneapolis is an extraordinary city. People love living here. When they come, they don't leave more than any other city in the country.
It's a good city for most of the people, but we also recognize that Minneapolis isn't the same city for everybody.
We often see things at the surface level, but if you dig a little bit below the surface, you'll see that Minneapolis also has some of the greatest disparities in the country.
On education, employment, housing, health, you name it. Of color compared to white people have the biggest gap in successful outcomes.
The best asset that any society will have is people. If that society doesn't invest in every single person, the society is not going to succeed.
And one thing that we really want to get accomplished through the City Accelerator program is to help us have a broader engagement strategy so that we're really tackling these disparities in a more significant way.
So what we are doing is taking a deep dive into how we do our engagement.
We put together what's called the Blueprint for Equitable Engagement, which is a strategic plan that really lays out how we're going to move forward with our engagement work.
We want to move beyond one-way communication with our residents. How do we develop dynamic, interactive systems that allow us to communicate in two ways with our residents. The blueprint is relatively new, so the City Accelerator program would help us connect us to resources and allow us to see other strategies.
Being part of the City Accelerator cohort group, I think will give us an opportunity to really test that out and to have the technical support in order to make it the most effective.
We do want this place to be a place where people of color can thrive. And that's what I'm after, is making sure everybody in the community is engaged in making us a community for everybody.
We're all residents of the city of Minneapolis, but in the end, it is culture. We have cultural identity, and when the engagement takes that in consideration, it brings on that aspect of authenticity.
Minneapolis has added an access and outreach team, which is intended to help engage folks that are underrepresented in our current engagement efforts.
Our next question is, what does an engaged community look like for you?
Elected officials should have like a mandatory engagement quota.
Fund organizing for racial and economic justice.
Dollars for neighborhoods for equitable engagement.
Minneapolis, 400,000 people. Latinos are easily 10%. It's a growing community.
The disability community doesn't want to be segregated when we're spoken to. We want to be integrated into all the topics and communities, because people with disabilities represent every culture and every community in Minneapolis.
We wanted to engage with the city of Minneapolis and advise the city in ways in which they could do better and reinvest back into the community.
We bring people from the community to sit with us and also sit with people from the city of Minneapolis and letting them know why is it so important that their voice is heard. If that's possible, we can make a lot of victories here in the city of Minneapolis and around the state.
The city of Minneapolis is so enthusiastic about making sure that people can participate in what we do, that we have a lot of places in the city that are doing that work.
Historically, we have distrust in those communities, distrust towards the institutions, towards the city, and we need to change that paradigm. The arts do appeal to different audiences, and that's one of the beauties of it.
They used creative methods to start a conversation, and they really engaged people about things they care about, in their daily life. And that was different from noticing a meeting and asking people to come to City Hall or Public Service Center.
People were showing up at the city's focus groups who hadn't come there before because they felt like the city cared in a different way.
So we're very deliberate in connecting to artists, making sure that the artists involved in the program understand those audiences are, in some cases, from those communities.
People respond differently, to someone coming up on the street and asking them to draw something or write something on a chalkboard, a question.
The tools themselves, by themselves, aren't remarkable. What's remarkable are the relationships that have been created, because that becomes the pathway for our collective future.
We here at the city are fortunate to be recipients of a Bloomberg Philanthropies Innovation Team Grant, which is designed to have us take all our data, put it together, and determine if we are providing our services equitably around the city.
We're really trying to understand how we can use our data better. This is happening through our innovation team. This is also happening through a new analytical system.
And that's one of the things I look forward to, if we're fortunate enough to be part of this cohort, is the ability to really marry that work together and make each part of that work more successful.
The hope is with the City Accelerator cohort group is what we're trying to do is take these engagement efforts where we've had success and spread that out more comprehensively across the city.
We are at a pivotal moment in the city of Minneapolis. Many of the leaders in the city, including myself, were elected to do this work.
Eliminating disparities will bring prosperity to the region, not just among people who are newly participating, but among all of us.
We're on a wave of change. There's been sentiments starting to shift with the city. Our relationships and relevance to city work and city policy has changed.
We have the momentum behind this. We have the interest behind it. We have people focused in on it. Time now is to act.
What I'm excited about the City Accelerator program is that we can learn from other cities. we're going to have to develop something that works well for Minneapolis, but we know that there's great work going on across the country. We want to build off those ideas as well.
If we do this right, residents of Minneapolis from every neighborhood, from every ethnic group, from every income level will be active participants in determining the future of their city.
All right. All right. So thank you for indulging me in playing that video. I think the video does a great job of framing up the work with the blueprint and how it fits with the other projects that are going on with the city. Creative Cities Making, the Bloomberg Grant. We are all working together to connect these dots. And so I think it does a good job with that. I will tell you, just in the process right now with the blueprint, a number of these pieces are actually already underway. We're already working on them just because it's time to move forward on some of this stuff. Some of this is yet to be developed. We have some timing work to still be done to lay out exactly when we're going to take each piece forward. But today what I'll present is the framework that we have in place. Following our principles of engagement, we're going to be sending this back out to the neighborhood organizations, to the cultural groups that we work with, to all the people that attended the focus groups last summer with us to help frame this up. We're also going to be sending it out to all the One Minneapolis recipients and the grantee applications. I think to the point Councilmember Bender was mentioning earlier, a very broad group of people, because the blueprint is not just about neighborhood organizations. It's around the city's engagement work collectively. And so really making sure that we have a good reach. We're going to open it up for 45 days for comment. When those comments come back, we're going to take those comments, frame up the final pieces of this. And our intent is to bring it back to this committee in July for approval. And then, as I mentioned, some pieces are already under implementation, but the other pieces to be moving forward. It becomes our major policy framework really for the next couple of years, both for the department and for the NCEC. So this is a significant document, I guess, to kind of cut to the chase. So what is the blueprint? The blueprint is, again, as I mentioned, this multi-year strategy that's going to guide our work for the next couple of years. We're focusing in on 3 areas: neighborhood organizations, which is one of our formal engagement networks, as you're well aware. City boards and commissions work, so we include that. And then also the city departments and how they do their engagement, and how we as a department, NCR, can be a resource and better serve the community, the city departments and their work. I should also say this is really about strengthening current engagement practices that are working well as providing a space for new ideas to come forward about different ways we can engage. And then also we're recognizing some of the deficiencies, for lack of a better term, both in how the department operates, but also how some of our engagement work, and how we can strengthen those and or change those to be more effective. You'll notice right at the top, we start off with the definition of equity. This is the definition that the City Council approved about a year ago. Equity is fair and just opportunities and outcomes for all people. We're making sure that we align this with what the city work is that has already been completed and connecting it to that. In the report, which provides a lot more detail about this, today's presentation is a little bit more on the higher level, but the report itself has a lot more detail. We also mentioned the definition about racial equity. And so when we're talking about equitable engagement, we're using actually both terms, racial equity as well as equity. The vision, we wanted to be clear about where we're going and what this looks like, and it's a pretty simple and simply stated there: innovative, just and fair engagement that connects residents and government to achieve the One Minneapolis goal. Again, just being very conscious about making sure that the work that we're doing is connecting with that goal, goal specifically with the city. We also wanted to make sure that we outlined why we are doing this. We know that Minneapolis is becoming more diverse and the city is changing, and that some of our current engagement strategies need to be updated, revised. We need to have new ways to engage with residents. And so recognizing why we need to do this as the city is getting more diverse, we have many inequities in our city, and the community and the city must work together in order to address these, and that inclusive and equitable participation meets people where they are at, and that all community voices are sought and to help inform decision makers such as yourself when you're making policies and programs, allocation of resources, and what have you. There's a little bit more here on the purpose and the results. I'm going to kind of skip over this. You can read through this at your leisure, but we wanted to be really clear as we were laying this out, both working with the NCEC and then within the department about the purpose and what the results of this would look like when we are done. This slide I want to spend just a couple minutes on because we wrestled with this a lot. I just have to say part of the delay, I think, in some of the work, I don't even say delay, I think it was an exercise we really needed to go forward with and have. I think the graph here, and just to explain the graph here, really represents our place well. The NCR department's role is to support community engagement. We're not housing experts, we're not transportation experts, we're not transit experts, we're not economic development experts. Our role is around supporting what we do well, and that's the engaging the community and making sure that the community voice is at the table, so when discussions are going on around housing, economic development, transportation, and what have you, that the community voice is at the table for those discussions. It seems really simple and straightforward. It took us a while to land on that. We had a lot of commissioners that was like, okay, let's address the education issue, let's address the, the housing issues or the disparities, and we don't do that. Our role is to, again, making sure that the community voice is at the table when these discussions are going on. The other thing, before I jump into the next slide, that we also recognize is we needed data. There's a big data component to this. We need to build our data about how well our current engagement work is working, and then so we can establish a baseline and then also show measurable results as we move forward. The committee is really, I think, very much aware that we've done the city's appointed boards and commissions survey for the last 6 years now, I think 6 or 7 years. We did 3 cycles of that. And this year, for the first time ever, we did the neighborhood boards diversity survey. Both of these surveys are voluntary surveys, and so it's reaching out to individual residents to respond back to us as far as a number of diversity indicators. So anyway, we were able to do the first neighborhood board survey this year. And the next few charts I have are comparisons of citywide demographics with the results of the appointed boards and commissions survey, which was in 2014, and the neighborhood board survey. And I just kind of want to go through these a little bit more in detail. Again, it's data about where we're currently at and what the current picture looks like. On our 2014 boards and commissions survey, we had a 70% response rate, which is pretty high. What we found over time was that the first survey, we had a 30-some% response rate. The second time we did it was around 40-some%, and then the last time was 70%. And so I think it's fair to say that over time, there's a kind of a growing acceptance and kind of a building into the culture that we're going to be doing the surveys, and confidence that the data will actually be kept confidential and only allowed out on an aggregate basis. With the neighborhood board survey, the issue came up this year about whether people's individual information was going to be released. We did not do that. We kept it again on a citywide aggregate level in order to protect the identity of folks that were responding. But I think over time, that response rate will build up. Having said that, we still had a 52% response rate with neighborhoods, which is a great first start. We did look at if there was a geographic propensity for one area of the city to respond over another. There wasn't. We did look at the diversity of neighborhoods themselves. We have a diversity index that we use to measure how diverse a neighborhood is, to see if more diverse neighborhoods were more likely to respond or less likely to respond than others, and that was not the case either. And so it didn't appear that there was a geographic bias or a diversity bias that was indicated in the survey. Having said that, we still had 48% of the people not respond, and we don't have any indication about who didn't respond or why. So there is a certain amount of uncertainty there. But again, I get back to a 52% response rate is a good response rate, and I think it's fair to say that this is a good picture of where our neighborhood organizations currently are at. So with that, the first one up.
I have one question, because as I recall, when we first did this with the boards and commissions, I'm not even sure if we had 52% the first year. Do you happen to recall how well we did?
Yeah, Chair Gordon and committee members. The first year we had around 33%. The second cycle was 44%, if I remember right around there. Don't quote me on that, but it was in the 40s. And then the last one was 70%. So it grew over time. I anticipate when we do this again, it will likely be higher, a response rate.
I think it should, especially if we can keep getting some more great coverage from the local newspaper. That will really help us build the turnout.
That is true. Growing awareness around it. So the first one is around renter participation in neighborhood boards and the city boards and commissions. You can see that overall in the city, we're continuing to become a more renter-based city slowly over time. That number keeps going up. Currently, the latest data we have is around 52.5%, 52.8%, excuse me, is renters. Our city boards and commissions do a little bit better than our neighborhoods at around 20%, and neighborhoods are right around 15%. I will say we did see a fairly good increase in our city boards and commissions, the number of renters on there from one survey to the next. Again, we don't have any comparative data with neighborhood organizations, but clearly in both of those categories, renters are on the decision-making level of neighborhood organizations don't have a major role. I should also, and one of the other things I always want to qualify on the neighborhood board survey, just a qualifying piece of data or a statement, is neighborhood organizations engage people in many other ways besides just the board level. And so there's other engagement work that's going on, and we're looking at developing other measures to measure that. However, I do say, these are the folks in these organizations that are making decisions, so this is an important measure. So I don't want to diminish that, but there are other ways we can measure, and we're looking at expanding that out more. But this is an important one, and we will be doing the survey again.
I believe we have another question on this.
Sure.
Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You covered this a bit, but I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that you don't have data neighborhood by neighborhood, because the reason that may be important for something like this is, for example, in my ward, the neighborhoods are 80 to 90% rental. There's no neighborhood in my ward that has less than 80%, I think, maybe 78% renters. So in a neighborhood where 90% of people rent, to have a board that has one renter on it, for example, or zero renters on it is different than having a neighborhood that's even half and half. So the question, so it sounds like you don't have that data because of the privacy issues, but it would be helpful to understand, I would think, are we seeing the same, what does it look like in neighborhoods that are very high renter population?
Chair Gordon and Councilmember Bender, that's an excellent point. We did not aggregate it on a neighborhood by neighborhood level because in some cases we only had one or two people respond on a neighborhood level, which would be too easy to identify who they are, which then personal issues around like sexual orientation, income, education level and stuff, it would be too easy to associate that with an individual. We did aggregate the response rate by planning districts in the city to see if there was any variance there also. And again, there wasn't a pattern that emerged that one area had a better response rate than the other. But that's the challenge with doing a voluntary survey with personal data, in that we got to be really careful about protecting the privacy, because the more we protect that, the higher the response rate is the next time. But that's a very good point. Some areas in the city have much higher levels of renters. Stevens Square, for example, is about 90% rental. And it would be good to have that data, but we did not aggregate it on that level.
Mr. Chair, just another quick point. I mean, one of my constituents has been doing some research on this and some writing about it. And I mean, he even looked and saw that neighborhoods that have the highest percentage of renters and highest amount of ethnic diversity or populations of non-white residents have the most restrictive bylaws in their board bylaws and the most barriers to participation. And so I think some of these questions are really important in terms of, how are these organizations working to include or maybe actively exclude people?
I think that's an interesting point. Now, we have demographic information on the neighborhoods available on the city website. Is that correct?
Chair Gordon, that is correct.
So one of the things that a neighborhood board could do is they could take the survey questions and go ahead and keep answering them, or try to understand the makeup of their boards or their committees, and then just take some initiative and hold that up against the demographics and see. And I think that could shed some light on issues. I think a lot of neighborhoods have already kind of been doing that and looking at how well they reflect the area. I'm not saying they aren't, but.
And Chair Gordon and Councilmember Bender, the other thing that we're looking at, which I was going to touch on later, but I'll touch on it now. We are looking at our annual report format the neighborhoods submit, and looking at that from a data perspective now. We're going to revamp that to try to collect more of this data on the neighborhood level. So if Stevens Square Stevens Square, I believe, actually has a fairly high number of renters on their board. I'm not exactly sure. Just anecdotally, I think they do. What kind of activities that they're doing in order to engage different under-engaged communities. And so we're changing our reporting format to drive more to those type of measurable results. The next slide, and again, I'll stop on these if you'd like. Otherwise, I'll just kind of keep moving through those. So please let me know where you'd like me to stop. The next slide is persons of color, people that identify themselves as being a person of color. In the city, it's about a 60-40 split. Boards and commissions on the city level and neighborhood organizations, pretty close to the same here, about 17%. Again, substantial room for growth in both of those categories. And again, just as a reminder, the blueprint does cover the city boards and commissions work too, so that's why I'm using the comparative data here, and that these are our two data sets. The Latino Hispanic identification is around 11% in the city. Our city boards and commissions is 8%. It's actually 8-point-something%. It's rounded down there a little bit. And on our neighborhood organizations at 2%. Substantial room for growth here. One thing I will say here, because I think this is a really important point, one of the successful engagement strategies that we've used has been with the Latino community, and where we've co-created this engagement approach with the community. And as a result of that, we had the passage of the DREAM Act, and this year we're working on the driver's license issue over at the legislature, working on licensure issues for employment. And between 2012 and 2014, the number of Latino folks identifying themselves as Latino or Hispanic on our boards and commissions tripled. And I'd like to think it's a direct result of authentic engagement as well as seeing a relevance in the work. Why is it important to be part of the city process? And here, where there was a direct, tangible outcomes that were coming, people signed up and wanted to participate. This exercise here was an interesting one where we went through and we looked at how attainable is it to get greater kind of balance on our boards and commissions and our city neighborhood organizations. If we replaced one or two people, folks that were white, and replaced them with a person of color on each of these categories, what would be the result? And as you can see on this chart here, it actually drives it to almost identical with the city. It's a doable thing, I guess is what it comes down to. Relatively minor changes, and then again, this is just looking at for persons of color, but switching, getting a couple more people to be on the boards and commissions and or neighborhood boards would make a substantial difference on the citywide, comparatively to the citywide demographics. I'm going to jump through these a little bit faster because we're going to get into the meat of what the blueprint is, but where we are now, this is around household income. Both the city and the neighborhood organizations do a really good job about the higher income levels in the city. The lower income levels are harder to, folks with lower incomes are harder to get participation. Neighborhoods do a little bit better job on that than the city boards and commissions, but again, you can see it's a matter of semantics at the end of the graph there. On the left-hand side, it's still a pretty wide gap.
Super rich, don't see that.
And also, when it comes to formal education, you know, there's the tendency clearly with folks that are college graduate or postgraduate degrees are more likely to participate in both of these organizations or structures. That also is, I think, goes to say, and something that we need to really think about, that just who are we going to be able to get on our boards and commissions and our neighborhood boards? And so what other engagement strategies do we need to do to reach folks that are not coming to those boards and commissions? And I think that's a really important point. Neighborhood organizations and the city boards do a good job within a certain demographic, but for the other folks that we're missing, we need to do different engagement strategies to get that part of our community at the table.
So I just want to note those two slides are a little bit different because we're not comparing it to the demographics of the city. So it's possible we have so few people that make on the other slide over $200,000 or whatever. I mean, it would be interesting. Not that we have to do that, but we don't we don't know the percentage of people who are college graduates who live in the city of Minneapolis based on this slide.
Chair Gordon, I should have pointed out, the green line on these graphs is actually the city demographics.
That is it. Okay,
it is on
okay.
there. So
right. Thank you.
Yeah, it is there to compare.
The blue line reflects it.
The blue one is the neighborhood organizations. Yeah. Thank you. I should have mentioned that. And the red is the city boards and commissions.
My fault.
One area we do well on is age. You can see the age profile of the city compared to neighborhood organizations and city boards and commissions is very, very similar, substantially similar. And then the last one here that I have is around people with disability. Around in the city demographic is a little over 10%. City boards and commissions actually does a little bit better at 8.7. Neighborhoods are at 5.6. So again, room for improvement there. Basically, could double the neighborhood results to be matching the city results. I will also say, again, this kind of goes with the comment I made with the Latino community. We have a really good engagement strategy with the disabilities community. The work that we're doing now with the ADA work in the city, the program assessment that's underway, that has really, I think, brought to light the city valuing the disabled community and wanting to engage with them. And again, authentic engagement and relevance, I think, leads to changes into these results. I just want to touch on too, also work completed to date. This hasn't been working. We haven't been working. This isn't new. These challenges that are before us and these changes that we're trying to do, we've been working on for a while. And here I just simply listed out a number of things that are actually already underway or have been completed. Focus groups we did last summer to get the the community input into this process. We have the City Academy. You've heard of me talk before, I think, about the Boards and Commissions Leadership Institute, the BCLI, which is a partnership with Nexus Community Partners, which does training for people of color to serve on city boards and commissions. The work that we did around the DREAM Act, the Community Connections Conference this past weekend, we had 540 people attend. It was an extremely diverse crowd. It was like a really good turnout there and a really diverse group of people that were there. So we have a number of things that have been working well. I'm also mentioned in here that ADA program evaluation that's coming up, and then also the neighborhood program evaluation, which was included in the council's budget this year, which will be going underway shortly. So let's get into the meat of it. The objectives. We had a lot of objectives at first, which seemed to be really overwhelming, and we collapsed them down. We ended up with 5. And again, when this goes out for neighborhood comment, we're going to get some, or community comment, I should say, we're going to get some more feedback on this. The one thing I will say, the first objective is around the neighborhood organization work. We're terming this as Neighborhoods 2020, and Chair Israel is going to talk about that a little bit more, and then I'm going to pull back and talk about some department changes that we're looking at doing. But really, this is around clarifying the role and expectations of neighborhood organizations and putting into place measurable results around that work. Right now, on any given month, we have over 800 volunteers that serve on our neighborhood boards and monthly, and basically you can probably double that number about the number of people that serve on committees. So it's 1,600 residents on a monthly basis that are coming together to work with the city on improving our city. But as the number showed before, we can do more in that particular area to get greater diversity into that mix. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chair Israel.
Chair Gordon, council members. Excuse me, the NCEC recently, and we're still in the process of a strategic process to identify what our work's going to be in 2015, 2016. And in that process, we identified the future of neighborhoods, and first called Neighborhoods 2.0. And during the strategic process, one of our esteemed colleagues, Commissioner Gustafson, coined Neighborhoods 2020. And we thought the future of neighborhoods is kind of uncertain after this funding cycle. And so to transition, we wanted to acknowledge first where we are, current successes, that NRP was a great program for stimulating the community development and bringing community and residents along in that process, and serving as a catalyst of millions of dollars being invested in the neighborhoods. So some neighborhoods continue to administer NRP funds, but NRP is over. And so with that, we say, what is the future? the demographics of the city continue to change. And since resources continue to be invested in the neighborhoods and neighborhood organizations are looked to for decision-making processes and policy questions as to how the city moves forward, we think it is vital that the future of neighborhoods is built into the umbrella of our Blueprint for Equitable Engagement framework. To that end, what we've endeavored with Neighborhoods 2020 is to develop a set of recommended change to the CBP guidelines for the 2017-2020 cycle, as well as what neighborhoods should consist of and how they can do their work better 2020 and going forward. All the work that we do, of course, will be consistent with the city's principles of community engagement, and we're excited. A lot of the questions that you all have asked today are at the forefront of all of our committee work. We're looking at how do we bridge people that flat out want to be engaged but don't want to work it within the framework of neighborhood organizations, those that don't have the time, resources, or other resources to participate. How can we get those voices embedded into the decision-making process? So not only will it be Neighborhoods 2020, but the other body of work, our One Minneapolis Fund, that is exclusive to non-neighborhood organizations. We continue to put a lot of work into that. So I will defer back to David.
So in this, the one thing a statement that I thought was really relevant for this conversation today when the NCEZ was working on it is that the recognition of the transition we're asking neighborhoods to go from the NRP model into now the engagement model with the community participation program. And specifically, the statement around the NRP emphasis on homeowners and owner-occupied housing established significant biases that remain today in the priorities, strengths, and operations of neighborhood organizations. And Neighborhoods 2020 is the support that we're going to put into place, both programmatic as well as structural supports that we put in place to transition neighborhoods into being more engagement focused. So with that, a couple things on this I just want to highlight. We're going to be looking at our program guidelines, as Chair Israel mentioned. We are also looking at some basic standards and around basic operations of neighborhood organizations, how elections are done, how board ballots are done, what qualifies as membership, what makes you eligible for membership or to run for a board, how the annual meetings are done, board terms, board leadership terms. We're going to have discussions around that and bring forward recommendations specifically in those areas. These are some basic operating standards that we would apply across all neighborhoods, and it will take neighborhoods some time to do their changes to their bylaws, but the idea behind this is to put some uniformity, remove barriers to participation, because we know some barriers exist out there, and basically making sure that the playing field is level. Because one of the things that we know, and I'll talk about this too in a minute, is as we do our other engagement work, like as I mentioned with the Latino community and the cultural engagement that the department is doing, we're getting a lot of engagement back in with the city, and we need to connect that with neighborhood organizations. But with that, we need to make sure that any barriers to folks participating are removed, and then supporting ways to retain people there. So we're not just getting people elected, but we're also helping to maintain diversity on the neighborhood boards. So you will be seeing this year operational changes that we will be bringing to the committee around just some basic operating standards, somewhat based off of the Charitable Review Council's standards that they have for getting certified, something in that particular area. But there's a litany of things that we're working on right now to come up with some recommendations. The second thing is that we're also looking at changing, expanding, I should say, our capacity support for neighborhood organizations around training. So we're going to be putting on online classes, for lack of a better term, as well as direct training workshops that we'd be doing out there around translation, around financial management, around standards and expectations within the programming. Also in this discussion will be, circling back, I'm sorry, but on the 2020 conversation, Neighborhoods 2020, what is the role and expectation of neighborhoods with the city of Minneapolis? So as we're giving money out to these organizations, to be much clearer about what are we expecting back. And so these are all independent nonprofit organizations, and they can work on other things, but under the contract with the city, these are the type of engagement activities that we're expecting. So just be a lot clearer about that. We're also expanding to provide this training support with other partnerships, community partners that are out there. A number of folks are already doing this. We're already in conversations with them about how to better align our training with their training, and again, making sure that's in place. And then we're also overhauling some of the policies that we have around neighborhood organizations. We have an audit policy in place right now. We revamped that actually about 1.5 years ago, but we're going to even go further with that and tighten that up. We are also going to put out a policy around translation and interpretation so people understand what the expectations are around that, who's responsible for it, how you do it, how you can support that. So a number of areas on that. And then the last thing under this particular objective is looking at the funding. Are there ways we can use the funding in a different way to incentivize more innovative engagement, more diversity in the engagement system, and just really kind of looking at how we can use the money in a slightly different way. The next objective is around our cultural engagement work. As I mentioned, we have, the department actually is doing a lot of cultural engagement, and a lot of that engagement is going well. I mentioned earlier the DREAM Act. The city was a partner with the Latino community. We co-created this engagement network with our engagement system with the Latino community. We got the the DREAM Act passed. We're working on the driver's license this year. We're working on the licensure issues this year. So in that particular area, that's gone extremely well. Our work with the American Indian community, also with the American Indian MOU, is going really well. But recognizing that we haven't had the, across the board comprehensively engagement in all cultural communities the same, and so really building that to be as effective in every one of those areas. Just to give you, I just was thinking for myself, this was an interesting highlight in this last week. We have one of our staff over at the state legislature right now working on the driver's license, who is then going to be coming back tomorrow night to help with Homegrown Minneapolis and pulling off the chicken summit. So around how the city's ordinance around having chickens in the city affects the Latino community, and just it's an interesting kind of mix of the two different types of kind of the variety of work that we do. So anyway, just pulling back to the first activity under here is really making sure that our work in engagement communities is comprehensive across all the communities that we work with. The next thing is around integrating and aligning NCR programs and staff to support this work better. There's clearly a recognition by me, as well as our own staff, about how we can better connect the work that we're doing with the cultural communities, with neighborhood organizations, and the city engagement work, and that we can do a better job at that. So I'm in the process right now of working with the city coordinator's office on doing some realignment of how our staff work internally. We want to have an environment of testing new engagement tools and techniques, and being able to allow to take risks. And then also looking at ways that we can use funding again to really help build our engagement with cultural communities. We've done a number of programs around leadership development within cultural communities, and looking at other ways we can expand that kind of work. Third thing is increasing our capacity with community partners. This is a given. We're in conversations with Kira already about aligning our CPP program with the funding that they have for neighborhood organizations, and making sure that they fit together better, and that we have similar purposes, and making sure that we line that up. Actually, at the Community Connections Conference, I talked to a staff person from the Minneapolis Foundation interested in doing the same thing with them. So basically aligning our funding and our programming with other programs that are currently out there. So from a neighborhood standpoint, there's just more support, and it's more seamless. And from a government standpoint, it's more deliberate and impactful. The fourth thing, objective, is around the city enterprise itself. This is around making sure that we have a value-based, principle-based community engagement for the city. We have already started training and support for the spectrum of engagement. We've had one training already. We got more that are being lined up, that are coming up. We're building a liaison network of training staff within each of the departments around engagement, which includes neighborhood organizations, but also cultural and community-based organizations, and really being able to build that. We're working with the city clerk's office on ways we can continue to improve our city boards and commissions. For example, this summer will be the first time that we'll hold a citywide orientation for all new appointees coming into our city boards and commissions, something that we've been talking about for a while, which is now getting implemented. We are doing training with staff around working with city boards and commissions. The commission has looked at and will relook at how we build a culture within our city boards and commissions that allows, from a cultural context, to making sure that when we appoint people, we're able to retain them. And so that we'll be looking at coming back with some recommendations. I'm looking at Ishmael because he's probably hearing about this for the first time. But looking at how we can make sure that our boards and commissions support diversity. And then also the NCEC has worked on a lot, an idea of evaluating each city department around their engagement practices and things that resources and ideas about how they could do engagement differently and to expand and make that and support that. So it's really from a supportive standpoint, and that will be actually coming out here, coming back to the this committee actually in the near future. The last objective is evaluate and celebrate success and progress. We're moving a lot of people in one direction here. And I think it's really important to recognize good work when it's being done, as well as to making sure that we're tracking the progress as we're going. I mentioned earlier that we're looking at and adding more data to tracking this work, but also we're looking at setting up, this is something that actually came out of one of our neighborhood organization groups, the Sun Group, which is Eric Gustafson over here is part of, is around neighborhoods self-recognizing where good best practices have been done. And being able to award them on that, and so both an incentive as well as a recognition basis. The last thing, just to touch base on, is we are also part of the Creative Cities Making Process program this year. It's around that notion of having new and creative engagement techniques underway, supporting an environment that allows us to take risks, to try different things, to really try to be innovative. So this year we were part of the Creative Cities Making program. We actually have hired 2 artists that are working directly with our staff in helping to develop and coming up with creative engagement techniques for neighborhood organizations and the city, which will include you, I should say. We're looking at ways to engage city council members in that discussion. We're really trying to think out of the box on this thing about bringing stronger connections between neighborhood groups, cultural and community groups, and the city decision makers. So it's again just practicing what we're talking about here. Some of the stuff again is already rolling out. So with that, I'm going to conclude the presentation. I know I went on probably a bit longer than what I had intended, but here's the schedule of what's coming up as far as a process. Again, much of this work is already underway, but we are going to send this out for community input, get some thoughts around it. Come back to this committee by July with the final framework, and then continuing the implementation. And again, at that time, we'll have more detail on some of these components where they're going to time out and when they're going to be occurring. So with that, Chair Gordon.
Well, thank you very much. I would like to make just a couple quick comments and welcome other people to make comments as well. On objective 1, I think that's going to be key or an important area. In fact, some of the discussion that we've been having earlier this afternoon was relating to some of those processes. And I've heard from several people that wouldn't it be nice if each neighborhood kind of had the same operating procedure, so if you moved in the city or as you go from one to the other, you understand what membership is and how you vote for the board members and all of that. I think that will be significant. I think it would actually benefit from having some engagement from city council offices. City council members and their staff work closely with neighborhood organizations. And so after that comes back before implementation, as we're working on some of those, I may have a staff direction or you can try to help, and the commissioners can think about this too. How could we have some council offices maybe working with staff and commissioners so that we could work on that? And I've got a couple other comments, but you can respond to that if you'd like to.
Yeah, well, I was going to say is the goal was to work with the HESE committee as we build this out and have it be a regular dialogue.
Excellent. And I like that too, but even to be, I'm trying to even cue from some of my committee members here that maybe it would be great to have some work with their staff between committee meetings and on the committee, but definitely bringing it back will be fantastic. I had a couple other, did you want to respond to that too?
I was just going to make a comment on objective one, if I could. So basically what we're doing with objective one, clear understanding of what we expect from neighborhood organizations as far as we're providing money to do what, and to be really clear about what that is. A clear understanding of basic operating standards across the way, a clear understanding about the support systems that the department will be providing, and then also a clear understanding around the policies that actually support this work. So you have consistency across the board. So if you're a resident of Seward, or if you're a resident of Corcoran, or if you're a resident of Jordan, the criteria to be a member of the organization, the criteria about how the board elections work, those entry points are very similar, if not the same, across the system.
Absolutely, and I got that. But what I was trying to say is I believe there would be a benefit from getting some more on-the-ground work and interaction with council offices to kind of come up with that. And also even the piece that would be, what are the consequences if you aren't doing, operating procedures, and how is that really clear and well known? So that's just to cue you guys. And if there's work, I guess, that happens between now and July after the feedback comes in, let's see if we can't get some council offices engaged in that so we can hear too. So look at that. I also wanted to comment on a couple other ones that is potentially a little bit sensitive, I think is under objective 4. This is evaluating current engagement practices of city departments and making recommendations on improvements. I think that's absolutely fantastic, and it would be wonderful, and it could be enormously helpful. I think throw out there the idea of maybe having a self-study, self-evaluation way to get there might be a more proactive way to get there than having your outside validator come in and make all the judgment calls and give them all Fs right off the bat, if you know what I mean. And I think there's real potential, and I think a lot of departments want to do a better job. They don't want to be known as doing a bad job, and so it's just a matter of how can we bring that in. It occurred to me, and I've thought about this before because I know you've been working on it and have a subcommittee, was, well, maybe kind of start with this self-evaluation, and then they could sit down with their self-evaluation and say, here's our strengths and weaknesses, and then you could start building from that. Just a thought.
And in the way that we're looking at the city departments task force that we have is working with the more so seeing it as a carrot instead of a stick. So just in how can we help you carry out your engagement more effectively and more successfully. So yes, I'm a fan of starting with a self-evaluation.
Great. And the last thing had to do with kind of getting a group to help us define what is a fully functional, healthy neighborhood organization and what are the attributes we look for. I think that's under objective 5, number 1. I think that's fantastic. If I could help do that, it would be great. And I think even having this peer-supported system out there. I guess that idea might be a little different than that because it's also celebrating what they are. But I think knowing what they are and how we can measure them will fit into this whole picture. So I really appreciate that. I know Council Member Bender also has a comment or a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just piggybacking a bit on the comment about the city departments, I think it would actually be interesting to take a step back, before this process is over, and sort of map out, and maybe this has been done, but what are the decisions that the city is making where we are looking for community engagement, and what are the current mechanisms to participate in those decisions, whether it be by elected leaders or staff in different departments, because the decisions that are made are really different across the spectrum and require different expertise and have different timelines. And I'm interested. Often we set up small groups of people, public advisory committees or technical advisory committees that actually have a huge amount of influence, for example, on multi-million-dollar infrastructure projects. A huge influence on what happens with those big projects. And, I'd be interested in understanding, is there a way to open up those processes to more people? Just another comment. I think, I'm struck again sort of by the emphasis again on neighborhood organizations here. I think they are a really important part of our decision-making process, but I'm not sure that they're always the best or only way, especially on some of these bigger multi-year conversations. And so I guess I would just encourage this other way of looking at community engagement, which is, what are the decisions that are being made, who's making them, and how can we then broaden the dialogue to influence those decisions.
I appreciate that. That could even be something to ask the departments as part of their evaluation too, or something. What decisions do you make that you engage the community on, or figure that out? I think we've wrestled with that a few times. Yes.
Chair Gordon, if I may, Councilmember Bender, I totally agree with what you're saying, and maybe my presentation focused a little bit too much on the neighborhood piece of this. Really, objective 1 is about the neighborhoods, but objective 2 is really around those other engagement strategies that we use for under-engaged communities, and 4 is really around what the city's other engagement activities look like and how we support that. That may include neighborhood organizations, that may not, and that really gets back to the first one about what do we expect? What do we want from and expect from neighborhood organizations, and how do we support getting that? So in some situations, it may not be appropriate to go to a neighborhood organization. There might be other engagement strategies or something that's more effective to get to the input that we're looking for. And so this is really intended, and maybe the wording needs to be different in here, to be neighborhood organizations are a piece, but we are clearly looking at other engagement strategies beyond neighborhood organizations to inform the city. And so that's culturally based, that's also around department based, and again, it could be worded differently, but that's the intent here, is to making sure neighborhoods are part of the spectrum, but they're not the entire spectrum, and that there's other engagement tools. The other thing I was going to mention too is that you had talked about within each department that there's different reasons to engage and different outcomes that we're looking for, and I think that's extremely important, that we know why we're engaging people and what we're going to do with the information that we collect. We don't want to engage people when we're not going to use it, or it can't affect the decision. We only want to engage people when either we're looking for feedback, or that there's different levels of engagement, I guess, is the way to go to it. And so that notion about building and training that support for the spectrum of engagement is around we are right now putting together an engagement network within each, so there's a point person, at least one person in each department that's trained around the spectrum of engagement, understands, basically when you engage and what for, and how you do feedback, and basically building that expertise across the way, so that there would be people within each department to be able to assess, in this particular situation, this is really more just, we're looking for public comment, or in this particular situation, we're really starting from scratch, and we're seeking broad input in order to help design a program. So building that network within the system, and that we would be supporting developing that network. So it's, again, in here, it's really at a high level, but that's the intent of that particular piece.
Well, thank you very much. And I understand this will be starting a 45-day comment period. So that would mean that everybody, including committee members, can put comments on this draft in during that time period, and hopefully we'll get quite a few. I really appreciate the report and all the work that went into this and having it come forward. I think we're off to a great next phase towards our neighborhood 2020 and all the great engagement work that we do. Seeing no other comments or questions, then I'm going to move to receive and file that update. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries then, and I see no further business before us, so this meeting is adjourned. Thanks.